Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Prophecy Roundtable. I'm Hamp. My other two co-hosts are waiting in the wings. Today, we are going to talk about Mystery Babylon. Who or what is this thing? And the woman that rides the beast. Are they different? Are they the same? Is it New York? Is it Rome? Or any one of those? Or those, right? These are the big questions. And ever since Alexander Hislop wrote his book back in the 1850s, there have been some different opinions, and sometimes they become very dogmatic. And we thought this would be an excellent opportunity to really dig into this topic. And so, without further ado, I want to welcome my amazing co hosts, Scott Harwell and John Haller. So, it's great to be with you guys. So, basically, you have a Bible scholar and you got two lawyers, but they are Bible scholars in their own right. I want to point that out. And it's really been a fun show. Big announcement, guys. We have all decided to start doing this show weekly. Okay. So every week you can count on us unless something weird comes up. But otherwise, we're going to be here and we'll be talking about prophecy. If you guys want to throw out some topics that you think that we really should talk about that and talk about those, you can put those in the chat and we will take a look at those, and it'll be fun. So basically, we're going to keep talking about things till we run out of stuff to talk about, which probably we won't. I'm guessing we will have plenty to talk about. So, guys, I don't know, John, do you want to start? Scott, do you want to start? What are the basic concepts of Mystery Babylon? What are the things you've heard? What are the things you believe?
John, you go ahead.
You're muted, brother.
You're muted.
There we go.
There
why don't we talk about the different views of what Mystery Babylon is? We know the reference in Revelation chapter 17. And I'll confess up front, about 10 years ago, I was doing a verse by verse thing through Revelation. And I got to the Mystery Babylon part. So I was reading commentaries and watching videos and studying and analyzing. And frankly, I found the topic to be somewhat confusing. And so what I did was I just stopped my teaching in Revelation and moved on to something else, because I did not feel that I was going to be able to contribute to the conversation, because there were these different views and everybody was incredibly dogmatic about it. And there was a lot of, what's the old saying? There's a lot of heat, but not much light. So I've sort of have taken since then more, as I do with a lot of topics in Bible prophecy, a sort of a broader approach to what is, I sort of look at the probabilities of what these different views might be and how they might work out. So here what I see are the four views or so as to who Mystery Babylon is. Well, maybe there are five. The one view is we don't know yet. We don't really have a clue. And Doug, I think you maybe have more knowledge on this because I think you wrote a book on this recently. But some say it's Rome. Some say Mystery Babylon is Jerusalem. Some say Mystery Babylon will be rebuilt in literal Babylon. And others say that Babylon is sort of a Babylonian spirit and it will be wherever it will be. Some think that it'll be in the Middle East. Some are sort of looking at this Neom city that's supposed to be largely done by 2025 or so, that Saudi Arabia is building. And it's interesting that with regard to that view, I know a lot of people sort of just dismiss it out of hand, but there's some recent videos out where they're Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, it's his baby, excuse me, is referring to it as the line. And so it will be the city with almost this grand processional It's not going to be it'll be a long horizontal city. Almost have sort of a grand processional way, I think, that mimics ancient Babylon in some respects. So those are the main views.
Yeah,
I'll shut up and let you guys.
Yeah, that's okay. I
Yeah.
mean, I would concur. Growing up, I guess one of the first views that I read and studied was A Woman Rides a Beast by Dave Hunt. I remember reading that, and obviously, Mr. Hunt was drawing upon a long line of, I guess, what you would call Reformed theology after the Reformers broke away from the Catholic Church and started the Reformation. And that's still to this day, if you like Seventh-day Adventists and most Reformed theologians view the Roman Catholicism in Rome as Babylon. Recently, I saw a post recently by E511 Ministries. He has been arguing that Babylon is Jerusalem. Chris White has written a book on that Mystery Babylon is Jerusalem. I think our friend and mad math scientist Doug Krieger, and I forget his co-author, they wrote a book thinking, or they believe that Mystery Babylon is America or New York City. I know from talking to Doug off air that Doug believes that there will be a literal city rebuilt of Babylon. John just mentioned the city. That's what I was. Yeah. Doug Hamp, our co-host.
Yeah.
And Doug, is that, in your view, is that a Babylon rebuilt in the area of the original Babylon?
I do believe that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just my view is from research, it's been this way for a while, but from researching today, the way I look at Mystery Babylon, and I'm not discounting Doug's view, because time will tell and either prove that right or prove it wrong. And that's the great thing about time. My current view is that Babylon, and the way Babylon's treated in the Bible, is Israel came out of Egypt. Egypt represented the world, represented the then beast system, represented everything that was not of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then Israel, after that occurred, Egypt was no longer the world power. Then Babylon was the world power. And Babylon was that first beast kingdom, which actually, due to the idolatry and sin of Israel, and God used Babylon to judge Judah and to bring them into exile. And then we see Babylon mentioned repeatedly throughout the prophets. And then obviously we see it in Revelation. I think in Peter, he says he's writing from Babylon. So that means a lot of people have interpreted that to mean Rome and or Jerusalem. I think as an overall typology, Babylon represents the world and the beast system and the false religion. In other words, there's one main false religion in which all other false religions, their tentacles all lead back to Babylon, all lead back to Nimrod and Babel. And it has different facades and veneers, but it's all the same lie. And again, Enlil, Satan, Lucifer, whatever we want to call the shining one, the Nakash back in the garden, he doesn't care how he gets you, whether it be through a mystery religion or atheism or Gnosticism or other false religions, or even you can be a daughter of Babylon. You can be in the church and be part of Babylon. That's why you read in Revelation where it's like, come out of her, my people. So you don't share in her sins. I believe a lot of the church has a lot of Babylon that's been mixed and blended in with truth ever since Marcion. And then it mushroomed in Constantine. And most people don't even realize there's still some Babylonian mixture in with the true faith that was once handed down to the saints. So so I think it's everything other than the New Jerusalem. How about that? That's going to come down out of heaven.
Fair enough. Well, and to that point, someone in the comment, codesearcher.com, said, So is everyone supposed to come out of New York, right? Of course, it doesn't make sense, right? So, and that's of course what you're saying, Scott, is that this whole idea that it's New York City or the Vatican, it doesn't make sense. What we always want to do is we always want to go back to the text, right? Look, none of us has the corner on truth, but the Bible does, right? So the Bible is our authority. That is our sole authority, right? And then we can go to historical sources and linguistic sources to help us understand that source. In the Bible, I think the best place to go is Revelation chapter 17, because this is where really God talks about it a lot. All right, so then one of the seven angels comes, says, I'll show you the great harlot, who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed fornication. All right, so that one clue. The kings of the earth made drunk with wine for fornication, so carried me away in the wilderness, sitting on a scar beast, which was full of, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations, filthiness of her fornication. And on her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon, the Great, Mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I marveled in amazement. The angel says, why did you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that you saw was and is not and will ascend out of the bottomless pit and go to perdition. All right. So, well, of course, this is the big question. What does this mean, right? And so I actually set out to write a book. I talked a lot about this very topic, because when it comes to understanding what Scripture is saying, there really is, in my opinion, no substitute for going back to the sources. We have to go back to primary sources where it originated. So let's think about it. Let's think about the whole New York City idea. That's a very, very late. The Vatican. Well, we're getting closer. I mean, that's again assuming the Vatican takes Lord's Day, and that certainly is not the case either. So where do we go from there? And I'd like to share with you a bit from my new book, and looking at that particular passage. He's taught this whole thing, and then as I was going through, I found this cylinder. Right, so this is about 2300 BC.
Your mic is breaking up bad, dude.
Yeah, I think you're getting some internet. It's like coming out a little bit garbled.
Maybe?
Yeah, it's like your internet connection's bad.
Yeah, that's a bummer. Is it still garbled?
It kind of comes and goes. So
okay. Well,
it just sounds like you're having like bandwidth issues a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know what to do at the moment, so I guess I'll just keep talking.
Okay. We'll try to interpret if it's too bad.
Okay. All right. So
that's a cool picture.
Hopefully, you can see my I'm just a little bit so you guys can see it better. So this right here is a cylinder seal. This is from about 2300 BC. All right. So we have exactly what John was talking about. We have a woman riding a beast. This is the woman. She's naked. This is, of course, your beast. And then here is another god driving here in the chariot. Before them is a worshiper. So that person is not too significant. And this is also a worshiper, right? In fact, it's the same guy. So this is what's called a cylinder seal. And so you can see this right here is the cylinder. And the ancients would carve a little thing on here. Then they would push it on soft clay. So then it just becomes a repeating theme, right? So that's the same guy. So this right here is Inanna. Inanna is the queen of heaven. That is what she is known, the queen of heaven. Inanna means queen of heaven. We see her spoken of in Jeremiah, Ezekiel as well. They're making cakes for the Queen of Heaven. They're weeping for Tammuz, which is kind of her husband slash son. It's kind of weird sometimes, but that's another story. And then this beast right here, this beast is called the Anzu Bird. Now you can notice here that this is a composite creature, right? So it's part lion, part eagle. It has wings. It has a kind of a funky tail. It has eagle talons back here. And so this is the Anzu bird, sometimes known as Ninurta, or sometimes as Enlil. And then back here is, in fact, Enlil. We can see his crown of 10 horns. Okay, that's kind of interesting. Crown of 10 horns. And Enlil is the same as Satan. Enlil is actually in Isaiah 14, where you have Halel, which Halel is Lucifer. That's an unfortunate translation, but we're stuck with it. But Halel is really the correct interpretation. It's the actual reading, which is Enlil in the ancient Mesopotamian literature. So here we have something it's right on. I've got another picture just to show without some of the other stuff. All right, so again, here is Inanna. Now, Inanna, she became known as Ishtar, Ashtoret, Astarte. She became known as Diana and others. Here's the Anzu bird I was telling you about. This is a beast, right? And then you got Enlil, who's driving this whole thing. This right here, this cylinder seal, gives Satan's big plan away. Right, so you've got the beast. The beast is the one who's pulling. He's the one who is making it happen. He's providing the power to drive this thing. The woman, well, she's naked, right? She's naked. She's voluptuous, and she catches your attention. And that's the whole point. She is to be the distraction, but she doesn't have the power herself. She's riding on the back of the beast. And then the guy who's driving the whole thing, the mastermind, is in fact Enlil. That is Enlil. That is Satan. This is his big scheme. So you get people to worship her because she's really pretty, but you've got to pay homage to this guy, to the beast, right? And he's savage. This beast is savage. And then the mastermind behind it is, of course, Enlil. So that right there gives us this incredible picture. And there's many, many more pictures all giving that same thing. And what's important to understand is that Inanna, the Queen of Heaven, she then morphed into all these other goddesses around the world. She became Diana. She became Aphrodite, right? She went to India as well. She went everywhere. So Babylon, or the woman that rides the beast, is both a concept. It's a system. It's a worship system. It's partly an economic system, but it's also a place. We know that Babylon was in fact a place, and it all started in the land of Shinar. And if we look at Zechariah chapter 5, it talks about how this woman in the lead basket, right? It's kind of a weird vision. The woman in the lead basket, who represents evil, is taken back by these two stork women. She's taken back to Shinar, where they're going to build a base for her. They're going to build a house in the land of Shinar. Shinar is the Hebrew Shnei Neot, which means the two rivers, and it becomes Sumer. Sumer, Shinar are the same exact thing. So when we talk about the ancient world of Sumer, we're talking about Shinar. They're one and the same. And that is where this stuff happened. And guess what? The Tower of Babel, Babel meaning gate of the gods, is where Satan launched all these different ideas. And it's that system and that city that God is going to destroy in the end times. And when we look at it, it's really astounding, because God says again and again and again how he's going to destroy Babylon. I mean, just in the book of Revelation, we are told that he's going to destroy Babylon. We see it in Jeremiah that he's going to destroy Babylon, and in many other texts. But think about it. You get Revelation 17 and 18. It's also mentioned in chapter 16. It's mentioned in chapter 14. I think I'm trying to think of where else, but you have it in chapter 19, the destruction of Babylon. And he says that it's going to fall in 1 hour. People are going to see with their eyes the fall of this city. They're going to say, oh, the great city that had all this wonderful stuff, and in 1 hour you fell. So it has to be both a city and a system. That's that. So that helps us understand how it can be New York City. It's also the Vatican. It's also Las Vegas. It's also Los Angeles. It's also, Brussels and Paris and all these other places, because the worship of Inanna, Ishtar, is happening in all those places. And let's just make it really clear. Inanna is not only pleasures of the flesh, okay, if you will. She's not only sexual perversion, though that's kind of her main shtick, but she's also into kind of whatever you're into, whatever pleasure you're after. If it's power, then sure, she'll promise you that. If it's fame, if it's any one of these other things, that can be your Inanna. And you can you think you can have that, but of course, at the end of the day, you really don't get to have those things. So what I discovered in doing this research is that what John was writing about goes all the way back to Sumer. And just to help understand that it's not only Inanna, but I looked at the dragon, the seven-headed dragon. There's a seven-headed dragon in ancient Sumer, right? That's where that motif comes from. The whole idea of the dragon. Satan was known as the dragon, and I have all kinds of iconography in the book demonstrating that. So these principal symbols of the dragon, the beast, the woman that rides the beast, these are found in ancient Mesopotamia. Even the beast that was, is not, and will arise, that is from ancient Mesopotamia. In Revelation chapter 9, where it talks about the 200 million chimeric creatures that are going to come out of the abyss, I found that very creature in ancient Mesopotamia. It's found on a Kuduru stone from about 1200 BC, and it shows this centaur kind of creature with wings and a scorpion's tail, and all the features that are described in Revelation 9 are also in ancient Mesopotamia. So the point here that I like to make is that we have to go back to the land of Shinar. That is where it started. If we start with the Vatican, we're going to come up kind of frustrated and like, this doesn't fit. That those other places, New York City, Vatican, etc., that they are practicing Babylonianism, sure, I agree with that. But they're not the origin, they're not the source of of these prophecies that John gave us. So to me, there really has to be a rebuilt city of Babylon. I don't think that's an impossibility by any stretch of the imagination. You got Chinese who are putting up skyscrapers in 30 days. I mean, it's unreal how quickly they're building skyscrapers. And I think you could build a city that maybe it would take a year or two or something like that, and you'd have a
three and a half.
Well, whatever it takes, but you'd have a fully functional city, and that could be the new seat of power. I think that's going to happen.
I use 3.5, just pulled it out of my head.
But whatever it may be.
No, but it's just a number that's in the Bible all over the place. But
sure.
This beast too, we see it in Daniel 7. And Doug, you and I discussed this on the phone the other day, that I never even understood it, even when I would study Daniel, why 95% of prophecy scholars and people that wrote about prophecy or taught on prophecy always tried to make the beast in Daniel 7 equal and equate to the dream and the beast in Daniel 2. I always, because it says, I forget the specific verse, but it says these will arise. In other words, this is like a future, very end of the age type of passage where it will arise. And as if to not cause any doubt whatsoever, John in Revelation, when he speaks of these these four beasts, they match up perfectly to what Daniel 7 is showing. And it is interesting that the images from ancient Samaria, Mesopotamia, I don't think it's a coincidence that it's the same thing that Daniel is writing about in Daniel 7 and that John is writing about in Revelation. So that's it all ties together. And again, you know, like I told you, man, as far as a rebuilt Babylon in Samaria, time will tell. I certainly wouldn't rule it out. I certainly don't think that it's just Rome is Babylon. I do believe that we see that maybe at the upper echelons of the Vatican, they know who they're really worshiping. Okay, I'm not talking about Roman Catholics that might watch this show, or if you've got a Roman Catholic mom or dad or family member. There's a lot of Roman Catholics that, in spite of Catholicism, are born again believers in Jesus Christ. Okay, but at the upper levels, and I believe they're going to be part of this great deception at the end of this age, and as we start to see the supernatural that you just talked about, when these 200 million chimeras or whatever they're called, whenever it's going to be supernatural. And too many people over the years have tried to interpret Revelation based on what they're looking at right now in their day, in their year. We're doing the same thing, or we would be if we were going, Babylon is New York City, or Babylon is Rome, or Babylon is Jerusalem, or Babylon is this and that or the other, because we cannot help but do it based on where we are right now. But if we learned anything from World War I and World War II, the whole world can change quickly in a very short span of time. And this was before nuclear weapons were prevalent and so many countries had them. And there was so much capability for destruction and maybe as we see in with the virus currently, and what if another more deadly virus were to be engineered in the future and unleashed on the world? You know, what if we really had a naturally occurring virus? So, I mean, everything could change literally in a day in this world.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
We could wake up tomorrow and the landscape of the world would be totally different. Now, I agree with John that for Ezekiel 38, and when the armies that are going to invade Israel, that's going to take some amassing of, that's going to take some logistics. That's not going to happen tomorrow. But Iran could get a suitcase bomb and start World War III tomorrow if they get their hands on something. They want to do that. That's how they want to usher in the end times, so the Mahdi can come on the scene. I mean, Islam is a complete mirror of what we see in biblical eschatology. It's like the Bible in reverse.
Hey, Scott, Stephen Gregory has a question. I just want to take a stab at this. Why is the woman saying she is no widow? Who is and was her husband? So, great question, by the way. So, if you go back to studying Inanna, what you see is that she was, her husband was Dumuzid, who becomes Tammuz. And in some cases, it's also her son. So, it's kind of a weird relationship. But that's what it is, okay? So, you know, that's what it is in the ancient. But if we actually go back to the book of Isaiah, it says, "Come down and sit in the dust, O daughter or virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground without a throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans. For you shall no more be called tender and delicate. Take the millstones and grind meal. Remove your veil. Take off the skirt. Uncover the thigh. Pass through the rivers. Your nakedness shall be uncovered." Now we saw that. We saw that nakedness in that cylinder seal that I showed you. And that is her typical pose, is that she is stark naked. And some of the pictures are much more graphic in the ancient world. But your nakedness will be uncovered. Yes, your shame will be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not arbitrate with a man. As for our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts is his name, the Holy One of Israel. Sit in silence and go into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for you shall no longer be called the Lady of Kingdoms. I was angry with my people, I profaned my inheritance, etc. And you said, I will be a lady forever, so that you did not take these things to heart, nor remember the latter end of them. Therefore, hear this now, you who are given to pleasures, who dwell securely who say in your heart, I am, and there is no one else besides me. I shall not sit as a widow, nor shall I know the loss of children. So that's Isaiah chapter 47, right? It's an amazing text. And God is now telling this woman who thinks that she's so amazing. Now, see, the interesting thing about Inanna, the lure, I should say, of Inanna is that she's always ready. Okay, she's always at her sexual peak. She never gets pregnant. She never gets fat. She never has anything happen to her. You know, she's a perpetual virgin, but she's not exactly chaste. Let's just say that she's not chaste. Okay, not by any stretch of the imagination is she chaste. But that's the great thing about it. She never gets pregnant, and she's available. So this is the lure: is that you have this goddess, and they had very pornographic statues of her that were often painted, so they were very lifelike. And this would get the men aroused, and they would go to the temple, and they would then participate in this whole thing. And there would be a young woman there waiting, and they could throw any amount of money that they wanted to, have relations, and then go their merry way. And they did their religious duty. I mean, who's not going to like that kind of religion, right? That's a man's religion right there. Sadly, that's what it is. And so God is judging her. And notice that he kept saying the daughter of the Chaldeans, right? So we know that this is a place. It's not New York City. It's talking about that area there in what we call Babylon, in modern day Iraq. That area is where God was talking about. And that's why the city has to be rebuilt. And the interesting thing about the city is that it was never destroyed. When the Persians came in, and remember from the book of Daniel, many tekelu fasen, right? You've been weighed and found wanting. That night, when the Persians came in, they did not destroy the city. They took it, but they didn't destroy it. And then later, when Alexander the Great came in, he took the city, didn't destroy it. In fact, according to the tradition, they opened the gates for him. They're like, come on, free us from these lousy Persians. And then just as time went on, it just kind of disintegrated. But it never quite went away. I mean, the city proper, the city, with the walls, that just sort of fell to the ground. But you still had the outskirts, you had the suburbs, if you will. And there was a huge contingency. The third largest Jewish population lived in Babylon. And so when Peter says, those in Babylon greet you, he's not talking about Rome. It's not a code word for Rome. It's talking about Babylon, because the third largest Jewish population was there. First, Jerusalem, then Alexandria, and then Babylon. So there were Jews living there in that area. And of course, that's where we get the Babylonian Talmud. It comes from Babylon, right? So all these things tell us that it has to be a literal city, that God is, that he's to some degree kind of judged it, but not to the extent that he says he's going to judge it. He is going to destroy it. He is going to flatten it. He is the one who's going to overturn it in 1 hour, right? So that's something that we've never seen. Now, Babylon does not have, ports or something like that. But of course, Iraq does. And so it could be that we're talking about the Persian Gulf, that maybe you could see them from that area. It could be that they're going to open a canal. I mean, these things do happen, that they can open a canal. We have the technology to build such things in relatively a short amount of time. And of course, if, as I suggest, Babylon becomes, the new world center, it's the new New York City, or it's the new Paris, or whatever you think is the kind of the world headquarters, so to speak. That's what I see it becoming. And that certainly could happen, and they could dredge something and then have an actual place with ports. So just because we don't see all of it, happening today, I think it's definitely going to happen. And that's the cool thing about prophecy, that we see that, things that were not come to be.
What's your thoughts, John? You've been quiet.
Well, I'm sort of a logistics guy. So if I'm going to go along with Scott on the 2 days, 2,000 years thing, we don't have much time left for this rebuilt city of Babylon to be accomplished. And certainly in the geopolitical context today, it doesn't seem like it's going to happen anytime soon. I mean, I look at Dubai. Dubai's taken roughly 30 years to build. Neom's going up pretty quickly, but it's not going to be. And then the question is, how big does the city have to be? And I don't know the answer to that because there's no indication. It just says a city, that rules over the kings of the earth. So I'm open to all the different possibilities, but I'm kind of a logistics guy. So I see some timing issues. And I know that I think what the Chinese did was they built a 57-story skyscraper in 19 days. Now, I don't know if they, I think it was for their new show, Extreme Skyscraper City Edition or something that they're putting together. Sort of like, we build these houses in a week in America on that show.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're doing that, but I see a logistical problem. But I do know that, there was some talk. I used to have a screenshot of it, but I have no idea where it is now, from back in the mid 2000s, where they were talking about they wanted to move the UN to Babylon. This was after one of the, I think, the second Iraq War.
Right.
We built that massive embassy there. Well, in Baghdad. So I don't know what the answer is. Like I said, I'm sort of open to the other possibilities and what people are doing, like Doug Woodward, Dean McGriff in their America Babylon book, and others who have the America's Babylon view, is they are, for lack of a better term, they're contextualizing the scriptures in the world that we live in today. So we know that the prophetic scriptures will unfold eventually in a real world. So people are just sort of trying to piece these things together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think anytime that we try to pigeonhole in our particular timeline, that's when we get in trouble. And, though, Scott, I'm certainly open to it all happening pretty soon, but, we don't know. And of course, things could happen faster than we expect. And John, I certainly appreciate, that you have logistics and, it does take time to build a city. It takes time to build infrastructure. I get that.
But I would also add, Doug, that, if this comes together very quickly, it will only enhance the sort of the spiritual power that this place will hold. If this is something that's built, Rome wasn't built in a day. And I saw somebody the other day, they built this model of ancient Rome. It took them 35 years. So my comment was, I don't even think models of ancient Rome were built in a day, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if this is something that comes together very quickly, it will be an astounding, stupendous thing. The person who pulls this off. And I think, so let's say it's not Neom, but we're going to get a preview here of how this Neom thing comes together, because, Saudi Arabia has the resources to pull into it. Iraq right now, geopolitically, it just seems like there's no way that this could happen in the area of ancient Babylon. The country is falling apart. It's fractured beyond, it seems to be, repair. But we know that Saddam Hussein, a strong man, was able to rule that place. It's a pretty brutal area of the world. When we were in England two years ago, back when people actually got on planes and flew places to do things, to act as things they were called tourists back in the ancient days. There was an exhibit at the British Museum of a guy named Ashur Banipal, and it was about a king of Assyria. And the British Museum has just this incredible collection of these reliefs that were taken from Nineveh. Like rooms of these things, and then there are many that are not even on display. And he was identified, I'm king of Assyria, king of the world. and it kind of gave me a chill when I saw, the signs for the exhibit, because I know that this area of the world is very important in Bible prophecy, even if Babylon is not there. So it's an interesting issue, and I think Krieger and Woodward and McGriff, when they wrote their book America Babylon, they looked at the scriptures of like Jeremiah 50 and 51 and said, well, what do these scriptures describe in today's world? And when you do that, I think the hammer, the whole earth, and those type of passages, it's not too much of a leap to say, well, it's certainly America or New York or sort of a combination. But
yeah, I think
it's one of these things we'll see.
Yeah, I would agree on that. That, I mean, if you're going to look at things like the way they are right now, and Chris White in his book does a good job of making a case that Babylon is Jerusalem. Dave Hunt and others have made a great case that Babylon is the Holy Roman Empire, which, and I kind of tie what you just said, John, into Rome never went away, in my opinion, as it went from being a political empire into this religious system. And then we see that even though there were different nation states within this religious system that were all subservient, beholden to the Pope in the European area, during that same time period, right around 700 AD, I guess what you would call the eastern leg of the Roman Empire went from Constantinople to Islam. And we still see that Roman beast, that fourth beast there, and we still see those two legs. In my opinion, we still see the West, which would be Europe and America and South Africa and Canada and Australia, and then you also see the Muslim nations, and obviously Rome has grown, and so that's where I do see so many elements of Rome in America. I mean, in our
let me jump in. Let me jump in, Scott.
Architecture.
Yeah, what you're saying about Rome is true, but go back even further, right? So these four beasts, the Antichrist or the beast in Revelation 13, he is going to be the amalgamation of all of them.
Everything,
right?
Yeah.
Because he has the features of a lion, the features of a bear, and the features of a leopard or a cheetah, whatever it is. So, this guy has it all, right? And what's amazing is that when you start going back, you find that Persia simply took over Babylon, right? And then Greece took over Babylon, and Rome took over Babylon, right? So they all go back there, even though they each now bring their new particular flavor of who they are, but they're still their core is still the same.
It's the beast system, that both and thing. I mean, people go, the beast is a system. I say yes and. Yeah, and the beast will be a literal person that's going to sort of be like the Nebuchadnezzar of the end of this age. He's going to be the Antiochus Epiphanes. He's going to be the Nero. He's going to be the Herod. He's going to be all these shadows of the beast that we see throughout history. He's going to be Hitler. He's going to be everything once the mask comes off, at the abomination of desolation, which I believe is going to be, he's going to mimic Jesus. He is going to either die or appear to die and be resurrected. And at that point in time, and he's going to do it, I believe, right at Passover, and mimic what Jesus Christ did. And then he's going to declare to be God. And I believe that will be done in Jerusalem. I believe that when we start looking at these ancient mystery religions, Doug, like you just said, that all evil roads lead back to Babylon. Okay. The saying is all roads lead to Rome. From Rome, then you got to go back to Babylon, like you were just saying. And so within certain mystery religions, it is their goal to rebuild Solomon's temple. they tie in with Kabbalah, they tie in with Freemasonry. People don't realize this, but Islam has its own Freemason branch. All these things are interwoven. You add in the international bankers and the people that really run the money of this world and really run countries. People freaked out about the election this last year, but they're like, I call them the puppet masters that would be Satan and his powers and dominions and principalities. The head puppets would be these guys that think they're the puppet masters of the world, but are subservient to Satan. And then they really run, they're like the human agents, or some of them, maybe the seed of the serpent or vipers, like Jesus said, if you trace that seed line back, and they think they run this world, but they're just underneath the authority of Satan ultimately. And this plan has been coming into place, not for centuries, but for thousands of years. We just happen to believe we're living in the age where the timing is right for them to implement their plan. So, and I believe we're seeing Babylon. We're seeing the mask come off. Like I watched the Super Bowl show. People were happy they didn't see, half nude women dancing around. No, they just saw like a satanic ceremony is all. And they thought it was, this was tame. I'm like, guys, this is straight from hell.
Right. I just wanted to point out Revelation 13 here. You got so it was like a leopard, feet like a bear, mouth like a lion, right? And then you got the whole 7 heads. And again, as I was saying, the 7-head motif takes us back to Ninurta, who was the Lord of the earth, is what that means, which is actually Nimrod, who is the rebel, and he's the beast that was, is not, and will ascend out of the abyss. I mean, that's the amazing thing, is it all goes back to there. Clearly it has modern day application, no question about it, but these symbols take us back to that ancient time. So sorry, John.
So Doug,
it's all. Go ahead, John.
Doug, would you be in the position then that the description in Isaiah of the Assyrian, I think it's Isaiah, should be taken literally, that this is where the area from which the Antichrist will arise?
I think that's certainly a possibility. I have done a definitive paper on that to kind of flesh it all out, but I think that's very, very plausible. Because again,
is he the one with the eye patch?
Well, that's in
Zechariah
11. Yeah. But it all goes back to the same place. Like if we're talking about the land between the 2 rivers, Mesopotamia, then it starts with the old kingdom of Babylon, then it becomes Assyria, and then we have the new kingdom of Babylon with Nebuchadnezzar, etc. Then we have the Persians, etc. Right. So all of it all goes back there, and of course all that goes back to the Tower of Babel, and that tower was a big deal. This is really a big deal. And then we even see in Revelation 16 it talks about, or 14, talks about the way of the kings of the east, right? So that the Euphrates River is going to be dried up, right? That's not New York City, right? That's over there. So something is going to change radically. And per your question, John, I think it certainly could be the Assyrian. But I also wanted to say that I think right now we have been living in, the Pax Americana. We've had the American Empire. Sorry, let's just be honest that we have an empire. And I think the days of our empire are coming to an end. And since the 1944 agreement with the Bretton Woods Agreement, we have been the recipients of much of the world's money because we've had the petrodollar. And so long as the oil has been pegged to the dollar, it's been sold in dollars, we have done great because countries to buy oil first have to have dollars. And that means that there's an insatiable demand for us just putting money like there's no tomorrow. And I think we're definitely at the end of the oil cycle. I think we're seeing a lot of electric vehicles, etc. Not that oil ever completely goes away, but it becomes far less significant. We saw this during the pandemic, during the lockdown period, where oil was just tanking. People couldn't even sell the stuff. Take this oil away from me. I mean, they couldn't pay people to take it away. That was so crazy. So I believe that the dollar is going to crash, and it will crash. I think it'll crash hard, but eventually the world's going to get tired of our dollars. They'll transition to something else, and then really our hegemony as the kind of the world's policeman, etc., with all of our dollars, we will lose that power, and then it can change things quite radically. That's where I think some new persons are going to come in. Of course, in the wake of all that, we're going to have lots of political instability. I very much could see a nuclear suitcase nuke or something like that, maybe taking out Damascus. No problem. I think that's entirely plausible. So it's definitely coming.
Yeah, I get I don't want to say it's fun to speculate because we're talking about some pretty bad things, but I've always thought that what kind of will trigger this final 7 years of this age will be God allowing maybe other nations to judge each other through war. It could be a natural disaster. It could be, a fault goes off in the middle of the ocean, and next thing you know, half of or at least the eastern seaboard of the United States is wiped out. It could be the San Andreas fault. I mean, who knows? It could be Yellowstone. We don't know specifically. We just know when you read Revelation and you read the prophets, you just know that there's going to be some judgment on this world, which God is going to use. To effectuate his plan. Will some believers die? People go, oh, he would never, do that. But people, just go back and read your Bible. I mean, there were righteous people in Jerusalem. There were women and children in Jerusalem. And you read those graphic passages that the prophets say will happen and did happen. And those innocents got caught up as a result of the sins of the leadership and the sins of their fathers. And our nation, we had Trump. A lot of Christians liked his policies. I like his policies better than Biden. Doug and I had this conversation. I'm the least political of any three on this show. But Trump, so many Christians put him up on a pedestal, and I don't want to say they idolized him, but they placed their hope in Trump and in America. Abortions increased, drug use increased, suicides increased, murders increased. The porn industry didn't go down at all. I mean, as far as the nation repenting, we did not have a Nineveh-style repentance, even when we were given a reprieve from the policies of Obama. And now we've got the Biden administration, as John likes to call it. And I have no doubt the person really running the show behind the scenes is not Joe Biden. It's probably Obama. And I don't know, I don't believe he's the beast, but I have zero doubt that if we're at the end of this age,
we shifted.
I
told your opinion. I don't hold that, by the way. Let's get to a question from.
I didn't say Obama was.
I know, but you're intimating it.
No, you didn't let me finish.
All right, brother.
I have zero doubt that Obama and the power brokers and the people that really run this world, the ones that really run this world, if we're at the end of this age, those individuals will be part of this plan in establishing a one world government. That's the plan. So is Obama the beast? No, but is Obama part of this system that's going to bring in this one world government? Probably. So would Trudeau. So would Macron. I mean, they all want the same thing.
So there's a question. This is from Lois. Excuse me. She asks, "Please address the 10 horns with the woman." So, great question. So, remember that initial graphic that I showed you that had the woman. So basically, the horns are representing gods. and Enlil is wearing a crown with 10 horns. So beast is Enlil, Satan, Nimrod. They're all kind of an amalgamation of one another. And that is who we're talking about, is these 10 horns. In fact, we're going to see in Revelation chapter 13 that Satan and the beast really become one and the same. They have the same features. They both have 10 horns and other features that we see that they combine. And I make that case in Corrupting the Image 2, which I'm just about done. And I'm working on Corrupting Image 3, by the way. And so we're going to see these two become one. And we're going to see that really the beast is going to become the avatar, the boots on the ground flesh person that Satan gets to walk around in. A step above just possession. And then they start to merge in who they are. And that's why we see that they're sharing some of the same features in the book of Revelation and other places.
Oh. Doug, I don't think it's coincidence that the UN and part of their agenda has a plan to divide up the globe into 10 different regions. And we talked about those powers and principalities, and we have Michael having to fight the Prince of Persia and the Prince of Greece. And so you've got, originally you had the 70 sons of Elohim that were put in charge of the nations. In other words, so I believe the same thing. You're going to have these 10 subordinates of Satan that are in charge of these 10 kingdoms. And then, like we see in Daniel, you're going to have, where one of those little horns arises to power and overthrows the other 3. Then you end up with 7, which is interesting. Again, none of this is coincidence. And we just happen to be, I just wish someone could get the memo out to some of people that are still teaching that this is going to be a 10-nation conglomerate that comes out of Europe. Okay, this is global, everybody. That teaching is from the 40s and 50s and 60s, and it needs to die the death that it deserves. It goes back to Babylon, like we're talking about. I'm not saying Europe doesn't play a part.
Which teaching is that, Scott?
I don't want to name names on this, but I heard someone.
Which one you were? What I'm talking about again?
Oh, okay. The teaching would be, and I grew up as a kid reading it from Hal Lindsey and others, and I can pick on Hal because he's been saying the same thing and holding to his guns, is that the Antichrist will arise from Europe, that something will happen to America and Russia. Europe will arise as a power. There'll be 10 nations. It used to be, they were teaching that it would be the 10 European common market. Well, then there got to be more than 10 nations. Now we're up to 20-something nations. And I do see Europe playing a part in this one world system, this beast system that's going to come together to form a single one world government. But I don't think it's just coming from Europe. You know the view, John, where they view Rome will revive. That's the teaching, that Rome is going to revive. And so anyway, it's part of the equation, but it's just not it has many more moving parts and pieces to it than just Europe. So,
well, maybe the final Babylon is the 10 different views of what Babylon is. I said there were 4 at the beginning. Now I'm up to about 10 just listening to our conversation.
And just FYI, I am very wiggly on Babylon. So I'm okay if we're living at the end of this age to let it all play out. But we're living in Babylon.
We're almost out of time. Yeah, we're almost out of time. Robin asked, "Who's the woman?" So, in my opinion, it goes back to ancient Sumer. It's both the city and the system of Babylon. All right, so I'm not going to say it's one. It's not like one lady. Certainly, it's not one city, but it's this worldwide system that originated in Babylon. That would be my answer. John, what do you have an answer for that, or you're going to kind of leave it fuzzy?
I'm going to leave it fuzzy.
Fair enough. All right, Scott.
My answer is sort of yours. It's all false religion. It's Roman Catholicism. It's Islam. It's the New Apostolic Reformation. It's the charismania of false prophets. It's this whole twisted, evil distortion whore of a system where we've distorted the word of God. And that's the woman. And that's the part that claims to know Christ, and he's going to spit them out of his mouth. Wow. And it's also all the false religions. It's Gnosticism. It's every false religion.
So before we close, because we're over time now, but what advice could we give people to get out of Babylon? You know, maybe it's not a physical location, but if Babylon's in my life, what can I do to fix that?
Go ahead, John. I'll go after you.
Well, you know, you need to, you know, there's a huge spiritual component here that we need to avoid, and we just need to stay away from that stuff. And all of this, you know, as I look at these different things just in my lifetime, even the last 20 years that have kind of swept over the evangelical church in America, this kind of from kind of a fuzzy to overt mysticism and mystery type thing. You know, you got to stay away from that stuff. You got to speak out against it. I don't know how else to describe it.
Fair enough.
I would, again, return to the Bible. And obviously I've been spending a lot of time in the prophets. And the prophets, sure, back then they had words from God to foretell the future, but mainly what they were doing is forthtelling. They were calling Israel, they were calling Judah, they were calling Ephraim back to repentance. They were calling back to God's ways, back to following him and loving him. You see the language in there about about the harlot. God is calling them a harlot. They were his wife. He loved them. He gave them all the gifts. I've been listening to a teaching. This is a marriage contract. So when you are in Babylon, you are cheating on the Father. And so many people, and I'm guilty of this, we all have a little bit of Babylon that we're probably holding on to. I mean, you know, it's one of those things. Ask yourself, search my heart, try me, God. He'll reveal it to you. Trust me, he'll reveal it to you. But the main thing is we need to be set apart. I watched this. I watched the Super Bowl just to see the evil in it. And a brother, I won't name his name, but he's like, "What are you doing watching that?" And I'm like, "Well, you know what? Really, what was I doing watching it?" Well, I did watch it for that reason. But the sad fact is, 95% of my Facebook friends that I saw, they were like, they didn't have a clue what it was about, because Babylon is everywhere. The symbolism is everywhere, people. It is the best thing. One of the best things you can do is turn off the TV. Don't watch anything other than maybe find some good, solid Bible teachers that teach the whole Bible. Get in the Word. You know, get out. Quit supporting Hollywood. It's junk. You know, be set apart. Be holy. What if the church, as in this last day and age, actually looked different than the world? Come out of her, my people, so you do not share in the plagues in her judgments. We all believe we're going through this great tribulation. That tribulation, when we trace it back to the Hebrew, that affliction, that's a refining process. He is not coming back for he's not coming back for a bride that's dressed up like a whore. Okay. And you know, so ladies, dress modestly. Men, cut out the porn. You know, I guarantee if somebody's going to be watching this and last night they watched porn, stop. God, if you're born again, God has given you the power to repent of that sin, and he's given you the power. You have nobody to blame but yourself, and you're choosing to follow that woman that was riding that beast and that evil being behind him every time you choose to sin. So that's the main thing we can do, is repent, return to the Bible, return to his ways. And, you know, if enough people in the church and in America and in communities and in families did that, we might actually see the church having effect on the world.
That's
It's going to
good.
get dark.
Yeah, good stuff, man. It's really good stuff. Well, fantastic. We're over time, gentlemen. I think you both gave excellent advice to people, and so I hope people can do that. Repent, basically. Be faithful to God, because He is your spouse, not Babylon. All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It was our pleasure to be here. Thank you for your comments and questions. We'll see you again next Thursday, same time, same place, and we'll have another exciting topic for you. Until then, many blessings. Take care.